What's going on, everyone? We have another great episode for you today. Jacob Sweeney, a good personal friend, former uOttawa GG and Moncton Wildcat. We go through his whole hockey career today, and honestly, we're just going to hop right into this one. I'm your host, Robert Greeley, and this is Greels Reels. All right, Sweens, how's it going, bud? It took us a while, but we finally got down to do this, have a little chat.
Yeah, it took probably 8 tries now. Timing
Yeah.
never really worked out. COVID didn't help either.
No, not at all. I mean, you're a busy guy though too, so we'll get right into it. I kind of want to start, growing up in Quebec City there for you, playing minor hockey in that city. Quebec City actually is one of my favorite cities in Canada that I've been to. So I'm curious what it was like growing up there.
Growing up as an Anglophone in Quebec City was a challenge to say the least. Even in hockey, I would pretty much go to the rink, play hockey, go home. Couldn't communicate with many of my teammates until I got to, I want to say I learned French in almost grade 9. I could understand quite a bit, but to not be shy and speak it took a while. But growing up in Quebec City, it's a beautiful city. I love going back, and my family still lives there and a lot of my siblings. But growing up hockey wise and school wise, going to an English school of 350 students, I think combined the two high schools are about 950 students. So the English community is really small there and tight knit.
No, it's I went there. I want to say 2 years ago now for the East West Bowl with the football guys, and it's such a great spot. Like, I enjoyed my time there so much. I was actually thinking before we hopped on, I was like, man, like, what's my top 5 of Canadian cities that I've been to? And I think I put Vancouver in there, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City, and then Grand Bank, Newfoundland, where my grandparents are from. So I think that's my top 5.
Oh yeah. Those are some good cities.
So let's dive right into your Q career. So 2011, you get drafted in the first round, Victoriaville. How did that moment feel? Because I mean, there's some pretty elite names in that company of that first round in 2011.
Yeah, the 95 draft year was stacked. Even if you go down to the later rounds, I think Anthony Duclair was a 3rd-round pick, Frederic Gauthier as well, stuff like that. But then you look at McKinnon and Drouin and all those big names that came out of it. I was really lucky because I played minor midget that year, and I wasn't really even on the radar at the beginning of the year. And then as the year went on, my draft stock went up, and it's quite an experience. The Q does it really well. It's almost like the NHL draft where you show up, and if you're ranked the first 2 rounds, you're sitting on the floor. They call your name. You walk up to the stage. A girl takes your coat. You take the picture with the general manager. But I think I have a picture. There's 10 people around me putting on the jersey and the hat. So, and then right away, the draft was actually in Victo that year. So it was almost overwhelming at the time.
What do you think would credit your rise in draft stock that season?
I don't know. I think I got the opportunity to go to the combine. They did an Under Armour combine at the end of every year, and I got invited to that. And I was on a team with a lot of good players, but that's where I outperformed a lot of people and showed people what I could do. And a lot of people took notice. So I think I was ranked maybe 3rd round most of the year. And then once that took place, I would think going into the draft, I was 22nd, 23rd. So I wasn't necessarily expecting to go in the first round, but it was a possibility, which at the beginning of that year, I didn't even think about getting drafted in the Q. I didn't even have an idea that would be a possibility. So it all kind of happened in 1 year where it just flick of a switch almost.
It's crazy how quick things can change too. And I mean, you ended up going 15th, right, to Victoriaville. So, I mean, the career of Victoriaville was short-lived. You only played 3 games, but what was, I guess, the quick impressions of the city there?
Well, Victoriaville is a small town. I think it's around 60,000 people. It's very, very French. And I ended up getting traded because I played midget AAA that year. Not many 1st-round picks get sent back, but I was one of them. They had a really, really good team. The Phil Deneaus, the Yanni Gourds, all those players. And then I got sent back. I got called up for a few games. And then at Christmas, I was traded for an older signed player. I think his name was Dan Milan, a 19-year-old, and then got a call from Danny Flynn, and off to Moncton I went. It was actually New Year's, my 16-year-old year.
Yeah, so one of those, I guess, classic OA deals where people are going for a run for the cup, so they offload a few young prospects and bring in some older veteran guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so that brought you to Moncton. I mean, how that was where it was one trip, and then the rest of your career smooth sailing in a sense. No more packed bags or anything like that. You became a consistent member of the Moncton Wildcats. How was that?
Oh, Moncton is that city will have my heart forever. That's a spot that I hadn't really been to the Maritimes before that, and once you get there and once you meet all the people, the one thing about the Maritimes is how nice people are. You can walk down the street in Quebec City or Ottawa, and it's everyone for themselves for the most part. But when you're trying to cross the street in downtown Moncton, people are jamming on the brakes to make sure you're getting across. So it's a personality, it's the way that people go about things, and the organization as a whole in Moncton as well, led by Robert Irving and everything like that, was just one of the. It made me grow as a person. So it was a great place to be.
How did you find the first couple of games in the queue? Because just kind of not in the queue, sorry, but with Moncton, just readjusting to that spot.
Um, you mean what do you mean by that? Like the how?
Like the play style, basically, like a new team, new system kind of thing. It's kind of, you're now going up against like 20-year-olds and diverse locker rooms.
Yeah, so they have a way of kind of easing you into it when you're 16 and you make your place. I think that's everywhere that you play, and you have to gauge it. And then you're always a sixth defenseman. They won't let you play against first lines for a little bit, and then eventually you prove yourself, and then you get more ice time and more opportunity. And that came for me when I was almost 18, like 17. We had a really good team. I was our fifth, sixth defenseman, and then as I got older, people started leaving, and then you kind of find out who you are, and it's with opportunity that you get to become the player that you are. And until you earn that opportunity, you don't normally get it.
Mm-hmm. Reflecting on it now, what were some of those big moments, favorite memories, whether, in Moncton particularly, or even just with some of the competitions with like guys you faced or big games or anything like that?
We had some pretty good rivalries, but I'd say Halifax, playing against Halifax, my 19-year-old year especially, we played them in playoffs. They had Timo Meyer and Ehlers, and that ended up being quite the series. And it there was a lot of battles. I think one game we had Ehlers, and I was in a shutdown role my 19-year-old year, and he had two hat tricks, or he'd scored a goal in the last 15 games or something like that. And we had stopped him, and there was a minute left in the game, and we are up 4-3. But sure enough, Nick Ehlers comes on the ice, burns one of the D men wide, and that's it. The goal streak continued, and then it's just like little things like that. Playing against such good competition, even when I was 17, McKinnon, who was the same age as me, but just way above everyone else. Like if you go back on all the players I've played with or against, like the Connor Garlands, the Barbashevs, the Deneaus, all those guys that I got an opportunity to play with and experience their level of dedication, and it's crazy. When I look back on all of it, it's something that not a lot of people get to experience.
Is there an added pressure whenever you go up against, whenever you did go up against McKinnon in the queue, just same draft class, both first round picks?
Oh no, I was never even close to that level. That's not a there's no comparison there. There's a couple of guys that probably got drafted in the third or fourth round that I'd compare myself to, but the no, like even when McKinnon was in the league, it was more of me watching him because they didn't really want me on the ice necessarily when he was out there, because their line was one of the most dangerous junior hockey lines of all time, I'd say.
Yeah, well, eventually Drouin got on that line with him too at some point. No,
Yeah, it was Drouin, McKinnon, and Firk,
yeah.
who
So
all have either had a stint in the NHL or are pretty good players.
yeah, no, 100%. Speaking of good players, who are some of the top guys that you played with at Moncton? What would you almost classify your superstar team? Who do you want on your lineup?
Well, Alex Dubois was the goalie who was there for my whole tenure, and I've never felt more comfortable with someone in net. He's about 5'8", 5'9". I think he's playing in the coast in the AHL right now. Played for UNB, but he was very comfortable as a goalie. And then on defense, we had, you got to think back. There's quite a few. I'll just go with the forward lineup: Barbashev, Garland, and Deneau. But
Yeah.
then I also played with Dmitry Yaskin, and he was a dominant force.
No, that seems like a pretty safe pick for a solid lineup there. Moncton's had a lot of good players come through, even recently too. I mean, Peltier, or I
Yeah,
think he just
okay.
got he got named to the World Junior team. I think he's with Val d'Or now or something like that, or
Yeah.
he got traded, but he spent a lot of his beginnings in the junior career with Moncton too. What do you think is really the secret with that organization, just constantly pumping out talent year after year?
Um, it depends. Like it's when you're in junior hockey, there's certain organizations when you have a lot of money, and it's not even about paying the players. That's not what I'm implying. I'm just saying it's more enticing to come to a big organization like Moncton, like the Quebec Ramparts, the St. John Sea Dogs are up there. Like you can attract American players because of who who you are, the rink, the organization, how the amount of fans. Like there's just so many little factors that tie into that. And Robert Irving, it's a first class organization. Like I'd put Moncton up there, maybe not with the Londons of the winning spectrum, but they're one of the top two organizations, and they always will be. And that's due to the dedication and how much that one of the most influential men in Canada cares about that hockey team.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it says something too where people I think don't realize as much. The junior hockey is also recruitment. Like you do have to recruit players heavily to try and keep them. Like, yeah, you can draft them, but that's not stopping them from taking the NCAA route or something else like that. Now I got to ask you, this is just basically out of curiosity, but you were on Moncton's roster for Cody Drover's famous 13 games with
I
the Wildcats.
13 games. Cody Drover, his first ever game. I remember it like it was yesterday. We go into Halifax. They just won the Memorial Cup the year before. We play their home opener, banner raising ceremony. We go in. Cody Drover scores scores 2 goals. I think it was.
Yeah, I think so, something like that.
Scores 2 goals in the home opener for Halifax after they raised the banner. We end up beating them, and he never scored again.
So it was, yeah. So I guess based off of that, though, pretty good first impression. And then, you eventually got reunited with him at the GGs. We'll talk about that later. But yeah.
No, Cody's quite the character. I haven't met many Newfoundlanders that I haven't liked. I know that that's a big trend on this show, but they all have a certain characteristic to them that draws you in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, this show is, it's created by me, right? So I'm always going to try and integrate as much Newfoundland, even if it is with a defenseman from Quebec City. You haven't even been to the province, have you?
I have.
Okay.
I went to Bell Island. I have a lot of family in Newfoundland, actually. My biological grandfather is from
Mm-hmm.
Newfoundland. So there's a lot of family kicking around there that I haven't even met. So
Yeah, actually, I think I do remember now your dad chatting with me about that too. Yeah, Bell Island. That's funny enough because my on my dad's side, my grandmother, that's like the part of the island where she's from, Bell Island.
yeah, it's a small. I went there on a school trip. I think I was in grade 8
Okay.
and spent 10 days there.
Did
So I got.
did you get the little baggie with the rock in it from the Bell Island mine that everybody seems to take away from there?
I don't think I got the baggie, but I definitely visited it.
So I mean, we mentioned uOttawa GGs, but before you started your youth sports career, you were spending a little bit of time at NHL camps and whatnot with the Canucks and the Devils, I believe. So just kind of describe that process and what were where was your mindset at where, you kind of got two paths going. It's like, okay, do I keep trying to pursue this pro career or do I also look at some educational routes and then maybe return to it as a lot of people have in recent years?
Yeah, for me, well, the New Jersey one was kind of special because I had a really big year. If you look up statistically, it's probably the only good year. But I was on the power play in between Connor Garland and Ivan Barbashev, and then somehow I ended up leading the league in goals by defensemen. Still don't know how, but it happened. And then at the end of that season, people were kind of taking a lot of interest, and I thought even as a 19-year-old that getting drafted would have been a possibility. So at that time I was optimistic, but it didn't end up happening. And then New Jersey invited me ended up performing well at development camp, coming back to main camp, and their rookie camp, playing in a couple rookie games. And then when I was in New Jersey, I got a call one night, and they were doing a preseason game in Providence against the Bruins. And Ray Shiro called me, said, "Hey, one of our guys isn't sure if he's going to play." I think it was David Schlemko actually at the time. He said, "One of our guys isn't going to play. Do you mind? Isn't sure if he's going to play, and do you mind flying to Providence with the team, taking warm-ups?" And I was, "Yeah, sure. Let me throw my suit on." And so got to take the private jet with the New Jersey Devils, the whole works, play sewer ball before the game. I knew I wasn't playing, but I got to take warm-ups anyway. So that was a cool experience. And then that year I was really fighting for a contract, but I was really adamant on not taking a contract to play in the AHL or an AHL deal. I was saying entry level or bust, or I was going to go back to my 20-year-old year, which ended up happening. It didn't work out. Played a couple A exhibition games, and then it just didn't work out. And I went back to my 20-year-old year, broke my hand, had a little bit rougher of a year, and even though we ended up losing in the semis. And then I kind of knew when I was going to Vancouver that Ottawa was my option. It was more for the experience, and I was lucky enough to get invited again to Vancouver. But it had already been released that I was going to Ottawa, and they knew that. And I was going in there the same mentality. It's always been entry level or bust, because I told my mom, if the money's not going to be there, then the education that the Q provides, that the schooling, playing hockey at a varsity level will provide, is worth more to me. So that was always my mentality.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a pretty solid mentality to have, right? Because, I mean, education is key in a lot of standpoints, right? And sometimes if you get lost in just the process of following a dream, when it's almost time to call it quits, you kind of get trapped and put yourself in a position where now you're kind of behind in other assets outside of the game, right?
Yeah, you become kind of vulnerable at that. Like, I would have loved to live the dream and play hockey, but for me, I just saw other opportunities and other stuff that I wanted to explore. So I got that opportunity by coming to Ottawa.
Well, you got a lot of incredible memories too, and I'm sure. Were there any starstruck moments on that Devils trip? Flying private jet.
The cool thing about being in New Jersey was how close we were to New York. So basically, once you get to main camp, you have a maximum time frame that you're allowed to be at the rink as per their agreement, or don't really know all the rules. I'm not a specialist, but so I'd go to New York almost every night, myself and three other guys. We just hop on the I guess train, subway, not sure. Hop on the train and we'd go to New York City for 3 or 4 hours, come back, go to bed, go to the rink, do the same thing the next day. So that was getting to explore New York City was one of the cooler parts of that whole experience.
Yeah, and you also got to experience stuff too, like the is it the Super Series, in the queue and whatnot against is it Team Russia?
So Russia comes over with the team, then they play against the OHL, the WHL, and the Q. And I was not originally selected to the team, but after they lost the first game, I got a call saying, "Hey, would you like? We need you to play this game." Blah blah blah. And I just hopped in a car and drove to Rimouski and played in the game, and it ended up being I think we ended up winning that one. No, we lost, and Russia got to lift the trophy in front of us. So it was great. It was a great experience. Barbashev we drove home together. I drove home with Barbashev after the game, and he was chirping the whole way home.
Man, that must have been a tough one. But no, because I was looking at so that explains it. Because sometimes when you look at statistics and numbers, they don't always tell the full story. So I was like, man, I remember you walking into a uOttawa study hall with the old like Super Series jacket or whatnot. And I was like, I know we played in it, and then I couldn't really see anything. And then I found like one game, and I was like, I feel like there's more to this that I just haven't asked him about yet.
Yeah, at the time when they selected the team, I was leading the queue in points by defenseman. So being undrafted, and there's a little bit of politics that go into that, obviously, because it's a tryout for Team Canada. Mm-hmm. So if they don't think that there's a chance you're going to make it, which there was no chance I was playing for Team Canada that year at the World Juniors, but that's like their tryout. They get to play against Russia, and then it goes on and they select from there. So not being a prospect, no one pushing for me in that sense. So it's not expected, but at the time I was pretty let down when the roster originally came out. And then when I got the call, I was obviously excited and went over and played in that game. And I think we still have it recorded on the bell at home. So I've watched it a couple times.
Nice. Yeah, it's great memories. What are some strategies that you do to process information like that and kind of like the emotional roller coaster that is like not getting selected and then getting selected to come up for a game?
Oh, I've never been really good at emotional roller coasters. I tend to get really high and really low pretty quick. But no, it's just a part of life. And back then I was really young too, and that wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always tough to make those decisions and keep a level head, especially when one thing I always find like that's absolutely crazy, and following the 67s for the little bit that I did there to like the OHL final is the amount of pressure and the amount of like fans and people that are like have so much expectation for them, and they're anywhere from 16 to 20 essentially.
Yeah, it's so much pressure, and I've never really thought about what I did to balance all that, but I guess it worked out in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, you also did get a little bit of that World Junior exposure in a way, because once you kind of got your skates going with uOttawa, there you got selected for the U Sport All Star Series that they play against the World Junior team to kind of get ready there. You got to go over to BC with Pat, your head coach. How did that all work out?
Oh, that was an incredible experience. It was so cool. You're getting to see how good U Sports is was what was the most eye opening of that is that every single game that we played, the kids that we were playing, I say kids, but they were 19 years old and I was 22, but just we were the better team in all three games that we played. And that's saying a lot about U Sports as a whole and how good of a hockey, like you could have plugged in a lot more guys than the guys that were there. I got invited not because of statistics, because Pat was coaching the team and he preached my two-way kind of style of game and how I could keep up size wise and be mobile enough to be there. And he told me early on that he was going to fight for me, and he did, and it ended up working out. And I don't think there's been many uOttawa players who have gotten that experience, if any, other than myself.
Yeah, no,
So I was really fortunate, and I know that Pat had a great deal to do with that. And it was an interesting time. He actually ended up running the D's while I was there, so my ice time got cut a little bit, but I won't hold it against him.
No, that's awesome. I remember you first telling me that. I don't know, was it a class and we were studying for like an exam, or was it an actual project that we were working on together? I can't remember now.
Well, that was right in the middle of exams, so I
Yeah.
had to defer a lot of stuff and get a few things moved, which luckily everyone was understanding and realized what kind of opportunity it was, and it ended up I ended up doing all right in my classes.
Yeah. Well, didn't you graduate with like cum laude or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, see, it all works out in the end.
Yeah. I guess so.
Yeah, no, it's always a process, and it sucks when you got to defer stuff. I will say, like, I always try and figure out basically like for me, like working in sport, it's always like, okay, how can I make my schedule work with football schedule or hockey schedule? So like no classes on Friday because I know like we're gonna end up traveling and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean. One thing I wanted to ask you though about that series, the U Sport and the World Junior one, is there a little bit of nerves going into that? Just kind of knowing that who were the big guns that year? I remember there was some.
My favorite player was Barrett Hayden.
Okay, yeah,
He
Hayden.
was he's got a little you could tell that he was going to be something good. I hope he still I know he hasn't really peaked in the NHL yet, but he was one of the ones who I noticed. You're taking me on a ride down memory lane that I haven't taken in a while. But what stood out more to me was the U Sports players
Yeah,
and how good a lot of them are, and how even like the Chris Clappertons, there's so many players on that team that could have that still do. I think almost all of those guys. I think one of them signed an NHL deal. I think it's Philip. Luke Phillip was one of them.
Oh
Fram was
yeah,
one of the was what Fram was one of the defensemen who plays in the KHL. There's the list goes on. If you go through that team, there's so many players and so much talent. That whole experience is really cool. Yeah, because I do remember whoever was the director of Hockey Canada had walked into our room and kind of said it's an exhibition and told us try not to watch out for the big hits. But at the same time, every guy who's playing on the U Sports team has something to prove because one, they didn't get that opportunity, and two, the amount of scouts that watched that game, the amount of people that were in attendance, strictly scouting staffs, not only NHL but AHL, East Coast, Europe teams, like coaches from overseas. So many people tuned in to watch that, and it was an opportunity, and it's a time for guys in U Sports to shine and show. And our big thing was showing what the league, how good our league was, and proving it to everyone.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that year too, you guys really did establish that because I remember a lot of conversation after being like, "Hey, yeah, like U Sports is legit and it's here and it's a good product and there's a lot of talent coming from here."
Yeah, and that was the main point, and that's kind of what all the coaching staff had stressed the whole time. And they made a team. Before they would select an all-star team and they'd bring in guys, and Team Canada would just they'd beat them easily. And then this time they selected players not only based off their points, but by talking to the coaches, by reflecting on their decisions on who would make an actual team. So they had their lines made up. It was really well done. The coaching staff was stacked. When you had Gardner was there with Pat, and the head coach of Calgary, I do not remember his name, but he was very well spoken and knew what he was talking about, and they preached a message, and it was prove to everyone how good our leagues are.
Mm-hmm. And just going back to regular season play now, and just living in Ottawa, because I mean, I spent my 4 years of post secondary there, and same to you. That's obviously how I got to know you, and you were a big presence in the bar scene. That was your part-time jobs, being a bartender, so you really got to see like a lot of the nightlife in Ottawa and all those fun things, and also dabbling in the music industry like you do. What would you say about Ottawa if all of Ottawa was watching right now?
If all of Ottawa was watching, not much, but the Ottawa is just a great city. It's not too big and it's not too small, is the way I see it. So you'll go out and you'll almost always see someone that but it's also, you're not sitting for 3.5 hours in traffic to go to work in the morning like it would be in the big cities like Toronto and stuff like that. So for me, it's the perfect size. I love the English element to it. That I grew up in French, and although I'm fully bilingual, it's not my first language, and I'm a lot more comfortable in English. So that was something that drew me to Ottawa in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That and Pat was very persistent.
How does it feel to kind of be recruited and have a guy like Pat being after you so much?
That was probably the sole reason why I came, because when I committed to the University of Ottawa, it was the first year that they were being reestablished, and that was a task and a half for Pat, trying to get as many players as he could. And at the time, it was hard to recruit guys who had a good pedigree in the Q or in the OHL and bring in those core guys that you need to build around. And he told me, he said, look, if you commit early, then we'll have better chances of getting more guys. So I think I was up there. I know Dunny was the first recruit. Mark was up. Mark Beckstead was another one. But it just, I took a leap of faith, and I took a leap in faith, not only in a program in a city that I didn't really know, but in Pat more than anything.
Mm-hmm. What is going through your head, when you're being told things like that you're going to be a big face in the program and you're going to be huge for recruitment, not only for really the first season, but years to come. And, even stuff now that you're gone, like what you guys, that core group established is still really relevant in recruiting classes today.
Yeah, I don't think it could have worked out much better other than COVID ruining the national championship for the University of Ottawa. I think the guys that Pat brought in were based off of character, and if you weren't a good person, you weren't being recruited. And he was very good at reading the people that he brought in and reestablishing the uOttawa hockey team and getting that cloud that surrounded the whole idea of it away. And that was with good people, and he knew he had to do it that way. And he ended up lucking out and having a winning record every single year that I was there with the guys that we had. Even I think our first year we ended up pulling it out. We made the playoffs every year, and it was just up, up, up from there. So it was a leap of faith that really ended up working out.
And so now we're, I guess, reflecting on the 4 years and, looking forward, and you were signed to go overseas for a little bit there. And then I think that league folded as well. What's really the landscape right now for, I guess, Jacob Sweeney, the pro hockey career or hockey player?
Retirement?
Is it official?
No, I don't know. I'd say high 90% official. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not, the passion isn't there as much as it used to be. Um, some people would say my passion was never entirely there, but hockey gave me a lot of different things, and it made me who I am today. But right now, I don't think I could see myself playing hockey professionally, even overseas. Like, I'd signed a 2-year deal in Scotland to play in Glasgow. The second year, what was the most enticing was that they were offering me a fully paid MBA scholarship.
Okay.
So that was kind of the main reason why I was going to go overseas. So when I was looking to teams, it was like, all right, what can you offer me for school? Because if I'm going to be overseas and just playing hockey, then I'd rather keep the school momentum going and then further myself or better myself going forward. And then when that option was off the table with COVID, the EIHL ended up canceling the season. And for that for me just was a sign to get to work.
What's it like to, I'm gonna pump your tires a little bit, to be as good as something as like you are at hockey? Because I mean, you are a fantastic defenseman, and it was a lot of fun, to get a front row seat and watch you play. But what's it like to, be good at something, be incredible at something, and start to slowly lose the passion for it?
I don't know. It's like I said, hockey, it has so many benefits, but it also consumes so much of your time. And that's the one thing about being an athlete, and something that is undervalued, is that you don't get to experience the things that a lot of other people do. And that's just the freedom. And although there's a great aspect to the structure of hockey and school and all that, but once it's all over, you kind of realize, okay, well, I like doing this kind of stuff. I like playing more guitar. I like going out and hanging out with friends, not having to worry about the curfew because I have a game the next day, and you enjoy your weekends and do other activities. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't really have an answer to that question. I just know that I'm grateful for everything that hockey's done for me.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's a tough question to answer, right? But I do want to chat about, all the other avenues, because as talented as you are at hockey, you're also a very talented musician. And we were actually going to try and get together, and you teach my unmusical, kicked out of grade 5 choir resume of me being in the music industry. You were going to try and teach me how to play the guitar. But yeah, I mean, you and your dad did a couple of live shows over COVID on Facebook there, just to, I guess, lighten the mood and stuff like that. Where did the passion for music kind of lie? Is that something that you got from your dad?
Yeah, I'd say I got it from my dad. It came a little bit later in life. He gave me a guitar before I left to Moncton. I always had it, and I was the type of guy who could play wagon wheel and just impress people for one song. And then at one point, excuse me, at one point it kind of became my number one hobby. And then the more that you play, the more that you're capable of playing, the more stuff you start to explore, and then it becomes a full. I just enjoy music. That's what it comes down to. It's not there's no light at the end of the tunnel of me wanting to be a rock star. It's just enjoying playing music and sharing that with other people.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I gotta be honest, if anybody's listening to this, and I guess, where's the best spot to listen to your music if they don't really know you?
Well, I have a few on my Instagram page, and then I think I made I guess, fake Instagram or a second one where I just post videos of myself singing. And I think there's 50 people that follow it, and they're people that I want sing the videos. So if you know me by any means, you're welcome to follow that. But I don't care if you don't. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I was just going to recommend for people to, check it out and give it a listen, because it is great. I'm hoping to see a live show, a Facebook live show soon with you and your dad again. You guys got
Yeah, there's I believe my dad's doing one. It's either for the Christmas hamper campaign. It's going to be all online, so everyone it'll be streamed on Facebook with donations and stuff like that. That'll be, I think, in a week. I'm not sure the exact date, but he's organized that with a bunch of different musicians and artists around the English community in Quebec City, and some in Ottawa as well. There's a couple bands that are going to hop on it, so I might play a song in there. If not, I will definitely be tuning in and donating.
Awesome, man. And so, Sweens, that's basically everything that I had for you. I mean, we've shared a lot of good memories over the years at uOttawa, but this is the part of the podcast where I hand the show over to you. So, life lesson, childhood story, really anything that you want to chat about, it's yours. I know you were giving me a hard time before we started recording here because you weren't sure what to talk about. But do you have anything in mind now?
No, not necessarily. I think with COVID, the one thing that I realized is to appreciate everyone around you and talking to people and reaching out. One thing that COVID's taught me is how much I value my family. And for a long time, I didn't communicate with them well. And now I get the opportunity and I call them often. A few of them have come and stayed with me for a little bit, but it's the count your blessings. Let's go with that one.
I think that's a good part to leave it off on, man. Hey, Sweens, it's been a pleasure catching up, and I'm sure we'll do more of it someday soon. But thanks for coming on and chatting.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed wherever you're listening to. Make sure to leave us a review. I love reading them. And in the meantime, stay Vest kind.